I never imagined that a simple home improvement project would entangle me in a web of deceit and legal turmoil. My name is Michael, and for the past 5 years, I've resided in the serene community of Maplewood Hills. The neighborhood is picturesque, with manicured lawns and amiable residents. However, there was one exception: our Homeowners Association, HOA, President Victoria Thornton. Behind closed doors, many refer to her simply as Victoria the Vigilant. Victoria approached her role with the intensity of a head of state. Every detail, from the hue of garden flowers to the placement of mailboxes, fell under her meticulous gaze. Until recently, I had managed to stay clear of her radar. That changed when I decided to add a modest gazebo to my backyard, a project well within the HOA's guidelines. Diligently adhering to protocol, I submitted my plans to the HOA's architectural committee, secured their approval, and obtained the necessary permits from the city. Construction commenced on a bright Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. The doorbell's chime interrupted my work-from-home routine. Standing on my porch was Victoria, clad in a tailored navy suit, her silver hair styled into a bun that seemed to accentuate her stern expression. "Good afternoon, Michael. I'm here to inspect your gazebo construction on behalf of the city," she proclaimed, exuding an air of unquestionable authority. She briefly flashed what appeared to be an official badge encased in a leather wallet before tucking it away. There had been concerns about potential code violations. Perplexed, I responded, I was under the impression that the city's inspection was scheduled for next week. Victoria's smile was taut. "We've received complaints from neighbors about possible safety issues, prompting an earlier inspection. I'll need to review your permits and take some measurements," she stated, her tone brooking no argument. Something felt amiss. While Victoria was known for her intrusive tendencies, this seemed beyond her usual domain. Yet, not wanting to risk non-compliance with city regulations, I acquiesced and led her to the backyard. For nearly an hour, Victoria meticulously measured, photographed, and jotted down notes. She scrutinized every aspect, from the spacing of the beams to the depth of the foundation, occasionally emitting disapproving murmurs. "This is entirely unacceptable," she finally declared, satisfaction evident in her voice. "The materials used aren't up to code, the beam spacing is off by half an inch, and there's inadequate provision for water drainage." She thrust a yellow document toward me. "This is a stop work order. All construction must halt immediately until these issues are rectified. Additionally, a $500 reinspection fee payable to the HOA is required." Examining the paper, which bore a semblance to official documentation but lacked certain authentic markers, I questioned, why is the reinspection fee directed to the HOA rather than the city? Victoria's eyes narrowed. "The HOA collaborates closely with the city on these matters, collecting fees on their behalf," she explained, though a faint flush crept up her neck. "It's in your best interest to comply, Michael. Non-compliance could result in hefty fines." Sensing the need for caution, I replied, "I'll require a receipt for any payments made." "Of course. You can deliver the check to my residence this evening," she responded, regaining her composure. "And refrain from continuing the work. I'll be monitoring." With that, she pivoted and strode toward her parked sedan. Once she departed, I contacted the city's building department. The representative confirmed my suspicions. No inspection had been scheduled for that day, and Victoria Thornton held no position with the city. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I reported the incident to the non-emergency police line. The officer I spoke with expressed concern upon hearing about Victoria's counterfeit badge and fraudulent stop work order. "Impersonating a government official and committing fraud are serious offenses," he informed me. "We'll initiate an investigation promptly." True to their word, an officer arrived the next morning to take a formal statement. I provided the dubious stop work order, which, upon closer inspection, was clearly a forgery lacking official seals and authorization codes. The officer assured me they would address the matter with Victoria and informed me that I was legally permitted to resume construction. That afternoon, As work recommenced, Victoria's sedan screeched to a halt in front of my house. She stormed up the driveway, her face a mask of fury. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "I issued a stop work order yesterday." Without pausing my measurements, I replied, "No, Victoria, you didn't. The city has no record of such an order, and you're not employed by them." I verified. Her face turned a deeper shade of red. "As HOA president, I have the authority to enforce regulations." "Yes," I interjected, setting down my tools to face her directly. "But that doesn't grant you the right to impersonate a city inspector, issue fraudulent documents, or demand illegitimate fees. Those actions constitute fraud and impersonation of a government official, both serious crimes." She opened and closed her mouth several times before retorting, "How dare you accuse me? I was merely ensuring compliance with regulations." "Save that explanation for the authorities," I said evenly. "I filed a report, and they're investigating. Moreover, our entire interaction was captured on my security camera." I gestured toward the doorbell camera, which had indeed recorded our previous encounter. Victoria's complexion paled. "You're making a grave mistake," she hissed, pointing a finger at me. "I can make your life in this neighborhood very difficult. More challenging than a criminal record would make yours." I inquired, genuinely curious. Before she could respond, a city vehicle marked building inspector pulled into the driveway. A middle-aged man stepped out, displaying a legitimate identification badge. "Good afternoon," he greeted. "I'm Robert Jenkins from the city building department. I understand there's been some confusion regarding an inspection." He glanced between Victoria and me, eyebrows raised. Victoria stood frozen, her mouth agape as color drained from her face. The inspector approached, extending his hand. "You must be Michael Reynolds. Your inspection was scheduled for next week, but given recent reports, my supervisor sent me early to clarify matters." Shaking his hand, I nodded toward Victoria. "This is Victoria Thornton, our HOA president. She conducted an inspection yesterday, claiming to represent the city." The inspector's friendly demeanor hardened as he turned to Victoria. "Ma'am, are you asserting that you're a city building inspector?" Victoria seemed to shrink. "I never claimed. I was merely conducting an HOA compliance check that was misunderstood," she stammered, stepping back. At that moment, a police cruiser arrived. Two officers emerged, one approaching us while the other spoke into his radio. "Ms. Thornton," the first officer addressed her. "We need to discuss reports of impersonating a government official and attempted fraud." What ensued was both uncomfortable and vindicating. The officers interviewed each of us separately, with the building inspector providing context on the severity of impersonating an official. Victoria's narrative shifted repeatedly, from claiming a misunderstanding to suggesting I fabricated the incident, and finally downplaying her actions as overzealousness in her HOA duties. When one officer returned from his patrol car holding both the fraudulent stop work order I had submitted and a USB copy of the doorbell camera footage that clearly captured Victoria identifying herself as a city inspector, the atmosphere shifted from tense to damning. Victoria's shoulders slumped as the reality of the evidence set in. But the final straw came when they retrieved the badge she had flashed, a laminated HOA ID card inserted into a leather holder nearly identical in appearance to those used by actual government officials. It was an obvious attempt to mislead. "Victoria Thornton, you're under arrest for impersonating a government official and attempting to commit fraud," the officer said firmly, taking out a pair of handcuffs. "What? This is insane," she gasped, her voice cracking as her hands were secure behind her back. "I'm the HOA president. I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." Neighbors had begun gathering on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion. People whispered in disbelief as the woman who had ruled the community with an iron fist was placed into a police cruiser like a common criminal. Her protests continued as the door shut behind her, muffled but frantic. The remaining officer turned to me and explained the seriousness of her offenses. "In this state, impersonating a government official is a classy felony," he said. "She's looking at up to 4 years in prison, though if this is her first offense, it's more likely she'll get probation and fines. But that fraudulent fee she tried to collect? That takes it to a whole different level. Now we're talking criminal fraud. 2 weeks passed before the HOA board issued an official notice. An emergency meeting had been convened following Victoria's arrest, and she had been unanimously removed from her position. The letter included a formal apology to all residents and a promise to implement better checks and transparency in future HOA governance. It was surreal. For years, Victoria had used her title as a means of control, turning every small infraction into a personal crusade. But in the end, her thirst for power had consumed her judgment. At the hearing, which I attended along with several other neighbors, Victoria stood before the judge in a dark blazer, her expression subdued but still marked by pride. The prosecutor laid out the facts in detail, how she had used a fake badge, fabricated an official order, and tried to intimidate a resident into paying a fee that was never authorized. Eventually, she accepted a plea deal. The terms were strict: 12 months of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, a $5,000 fine, and a permanent ban from holding any position within an HOA anywhere in the county. As the judge prepared to conclude the hearing, Victoria turned toward me. Her voice was low, but the venom was unmistakable. "Are you happy now?" she whispered, her hands shaking. "You've destroyed my reputation over a silly misunderstanding." Before I could respond, the judge interjected. "Ms. Thornton," he said sharply, leaning forward, "your actions and your complete lack of remorse suggest that this was not a misunderstanding. You deliberately impersonated a government official, fabricated official documents, and attempted to collect unauthorized payments, all in the name of power. Be grateful you were offered a plea deal. Your reputation wasn't destroyed by Mr. Reynolds. It was destroyed by your own conduct." Victoria said nothing. Her lips trembled slightly, and for the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. As she left the courtroom, her eyes met mine briefly, not with remorse, but with humiliation. After the hearing, several neighbors approached me outside. They thanked me, not because they disliked Victoria personally, but because they were tired of living under the constant fear of arbitrary enforcement and fabricated violations. In the months that followed, the neighborhood began to change. The new HOA leadership, chosen in a special election, focused more on cooperation than control. Meetings became open and inclusive. Rules were applied fairly and reasonably. As for my gazebo, it was completed 2 weeks after the incident. On its first weekend, I hosted a small gathering for the neighbors. We grilled, we laughed, and we talked freely, something we hadn't done in years without the feeling that we were being watched. It wasn't just about a structure in my backyard. It was about reclaiming the space we lived in, the community we shared. And while Victoria Thornton's name is now just a cautionary tale told in quiet tones among new residents, what happened that summer remains a reminder that no title, no matter how official it sounds, gives someone the right to trample over the truth.